Lebohang, let's begin with you. Now, everybody has been talking about this meeting like it's make or a break. In your book, is it?
Possibly. I think that President Zuma has been battling a bit to brand himself, and I think that the NGC meeting helped to reposition him as an assertive president, as a confident president, as a president who's in control of his circumstances and of the cabinet, who's in control of the Youth League and the leadership therein, and he's in control of the economy as well. And I think that this is certainly an attempt to show us that he's going to take us in a particular economic direction, and also that he's got the capacity to shuffle around and gather the correct team around him.
Sure. We're of course speculating. In your book, do you think it's likely that we are going to see the real Zuma, if you like, economically coming out of this?
You see, I think a lot of us have always battled with who the real Zuma is. And I'm not sure that he has emerged or whether he's yet to emerge. Certainly this whole rhetoric around the left-leaning wave that brought him into power is one that has been quite compelling, but to date quite unconvincing. We haven't seen anything that has been a sharp departure from the Zuma, from the Mbeki era per se. We've seen more of the same, I think, in terms of the fiscal and the monetary policy. And I suppose that the political landscape has suffered more from the personality cult surrounding Zuma and some of the many contesting forces that are around him. So the real Zuma, please stand up, I think.
Should business be worried?
I doubt it. I think one of the things that President Zuma has been very clear and very committed to and unambiguous about is the need to make assuage business fears and the need to ensure that the whole notion of South Africa as a brand and as a business destination remains secure and remains static and remains consistent. That's one thing that he's been very clear about.
We'll make you a fly on the wall in that meeting today. What do you think they were talking about?
Who knows? I suppose that they were talking about who's going to move to where, who's getting the new parking space. One would imagine, and I suppose that there's a lot of speculation about who's getting which parking space at the moment. Look, we're not sure whether Minister Manuel is going to remain. Speculation is rife that he's probably either going to the World Bank.
That was going to be my question: is he in? Is he out?
And why as well. I suppose speculation is rife about whether he's going to the World Bank. That's been an ongoing undercurrent, or whether he's going off to NEPAD, or whether he's going off to run to be deployed somewhere to run some kind of a pan-African agenda and to push South Africa's interest on the continent. That's the one. That's the sexy one.
Kobe, if Manuel were redeployed as a person who manages people's money, would you be worried?
Probably not. No. I mean, let me put it to you like this. I mean, I'm no political commentator. I mean, that's Lebohang's forte. But I suppose if you look at Trevor Manuel, I think he spent quite a few years in government. Okay, so I think he's run. He's done a fantastic job. And maybe at some point in the future, maybe government will call on him again. But it's tiring being in government. I think it must be. It's really taxing, and it is long hours. So maybe this is the time for him to go and do something slightly different. If that is indeed what's going to happen, because we're just speculating at this stage. And maybe that can also help the political cause and economic cause for South Africa. Let me give you some numbers over here. The spotlight is firmly off the West and on emerging markets. South Africa plays a critical and pivotal role as far as emerging markets are concerned. For me, that means kind of it is ripe for South Africa to now stand up and be counted. The question is, we talk about in economical circles, we talk about GDP growth, and we talk about making sure that GDP growth works, and that being the kind of yardstick of how well we're doing. We're growing at 3.5% at the moment. We want to fix the social ills in this country. We can't grow at 3.5. We've got to grow at 6, 7, 8. How do we achieve that? And we got to go find a framework in order to try and help us achieve that, whatever that framework might be.
Lebohang, if you are advising the government, given the debate around nationalization, the debate around the rand, the debate around the right kind of economic policy to be following, and given the issues that Kobe is raising about this being an opportunity for South Africa as an emerging market to be taken advantage, what would you be saying to the government and to President Jacob Zuma?
Gosh, where to begin? The wish list. I think that we need a really capital-intensive economy at the moment. We need an economy which is going to create and retain jobs. And I haven't always been convinced that the expanded public works framework was appropriate because it creates very short-term employment. People come into the economy, they move out of the economy, they move into spending power and out of spending power again. I'd also, I mean, the whole debate around nationalization, I think we need to de-link it from mining only. It needs to be a broad framework. I mean, I think it's odd to choose one sector only. I think it needs to be a principled framework. But I also think that, nationalization can mean all sorts of things. It can mean nationalization of, the commanding heights of the economy. It can mean a different kind of shared growth strategy. It can mean employee and employer partnerships as well within the economy. It can mean all sorts of things. And I think that we need to kind of like get into unpacking what it means as well before we can even talk about doing it.
Yeah. But in terms of the government in this record so far, do you get a sense that they actually appreciate and are committed to finding the jobs that are needed to get the economy moving?
Look, on paper, the last year,
but in terms of policies, is it there?
What we've got as GISA, which talks about some of the things which are concerns at the moment, including the rand, including, it's supposed to be creating labor. It's supposed to be also identifying, linking the labor market with technology, with science, and linking our domestic market with the international market, making it competitive and making it relevant. That's the other thing as well. The success of that is debatable at the moment.
The mix between what people have called the leftists and the center of whatever, and the middle and whatever. It's a difficult issue to manage. But in terms of where the ANC is sitting at the moment, do you think President Jacob Zuma has the ability and the capacity to be able to manage those sides together and be able to produce a blueprint that will lead South Africa into perhaps a faster economic growth than where we are now?
Isn't that what the post-Polokwane consensus was all about? Wasn't it about bringing all these particular factions together? Because he came in on this kind of left-leaning wave. He was also smart enough, though, to keep in for the sake of continuity, to keep in somebody like a Minister Manuel, and then he brings in somebody like Ibrahim Patel. He brings in somebody who is stoic. I think is the word.
But at the same time, causing confusion, because in part what you're doing is by mixing the two, you're saying you're going in neither direction.
Well, you're talking left and you're moving right, or you're moving exactly the same direction as the government has always gone. It's incredibly difficult to be all things to all people, which is what President Zuma has been attempting with very uneven levels of success.
But does that help define him then? Does that help in building who he is and giving him the ability to be able to create a path that's distinctly Zuma?
Well, the thing is, this is the thing I grapple with, guys, is that who is Zuma? It depends on who you talk to. When you speak to business people, he presents a particular face of somebody who is very committed to creating a conducive business environment. But this is sometimes at odds with people who are interested in the labor market, who are interested in labor rights, who are interested in as well in the development economy as well. These are always often at cross purposes, and I grapple with who Zuma is.
Well, for the record here, say that the government is following a mixed economy model where you have the state coming in and you have the private sector coming in. Appropriate for where we are in this juncture?
Well, I mean, take into consideration that we really do have two parallel economies in this country. And that the ones that suffer the most is really the informal sector.
Right.
The formal sector doesn't really suffer. The informal sector is quite robust. So it goes through economic cycles and it just continues. The question is, if you had to make a priority list for this country as far as government is concerned, you'd have a massive priority list. It's not like the Western world where you potentially have 4 or 5 priorities, you get those right and you kind of succeed. And the question is, how do you achieve all of these things? Well, difficult.
Absolutely, very difficult. So does he reshuffle?
Possibly. And
if he does, what does he do? Who does he bring in?
Now you're asking me things. I think he probably works with the team that's there. I suspect if some of the junior ministers or deputy ministers become full ministers, I suspect some of the more mediocre performers who have been full ministers might get moved aside. There's a lot of issues with personality conflict as well between DGs and ministers at the moment. He may want to think about how to reconfigure some of those vibes, because they seem to blow up in the public domain. But one also wonders when the productivity and the efficacy of those departments in the midst of all of those human relations issues. So he might want to think about shuffling a few people around to assuage some of those concerns.
Yeah. On the economic cluster, we have seen, I mean, the most visible has certainly been Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan, but Economic Development Minister Ibrahim Patel has been rather quiet. Well, would you take this as an opportunity to move him or give him another post that gives him greater stature?
Well, you see, the problem is that department in and of itself is not very well defined. It was supposed, it had a very fuzzy mandate, which was to do with creating jobs, and which was also to do with creating a robust economy. Now you ask yourself, between the finance, the Ministry of Finance and the Department of Trade, surely it falls somewhere within those two departments. So he comes up with a rather superfluous department, which is nothing, which is no aspersion of Ibrahim Patel's abilities. It's just a strangely configured department.
Yeah, we're talking practicalities here, but the president looks at the practicalities as well as the political consideration and the mixes and the balances, and it's a very difficult act to follow indeed.